Welcome to Extra AI, where we extract the raw AI stories shaping our future. Today's episode is one that quite literally changes the way we see the world, because we're diving into the intersection of AI, perception, and predictive intelligence. Imagine this: your VR headset senses you're about to feel motion sick and warns you in advance, or your spacesuit mid-mission detects cognitive fatigue and tells you to pause before you make a risky decision. That's not science fiction. It's what our guest today is making real. Joining me is Adam Gross, founder and CEO of HarmonEyes, the company behind Theia, the world's first AI-powered eye tracking SDK that runs on any device with a camera. Backed by a 13.5 million record dataset and designed for predictive performance across industries like aerospace, gaming, automotive, and beyond. HarmonEyes is setting a new standard for what it means to look ahead. Adam, welcome to Extra AI. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to our Extra AI podcast series. Today, I have an interesting topic that I'm going to talk about AI meeting your eye or eye tracking devices. I think this is what we're going to talk. And I have the co-founder and CEO of HarmonEyes, Adam. Adam, welcome on board.
Hey, Raghu. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So before we get started, Adam, I would like to maybe start with a couple of questions about your interaction or your background or your personal story about how you came up into this intersection of what do you call the eye tracking devices or AI, and maybe a personal or a professional story, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Sure. Yeah. A little unconventional. I'm I guess an entrepreneur by trade. And by legacy, I come from a family of entrepreneurs and builders, and so I kind of continued in that mold. And about 12 years ago, I met a woman, Dr. Melissa Hunfelvey, and I had just come off selling another company, and I was kind of doing the onboarding and integration with that company, and met my partner on the tennis court. And fortunately, our cars were parked next to each other, and we started talking and telling our own personal stories to each other. And I learned about this incredible sensor, this eye tracking sensor, and the importance of eye movement behavior. And so basically, we kind of went a little bit deep on that. And Melissa's background is as an eye tracking scientist, and she had created a number of eye tracking products already. And so just the technology, the biosignal was very intuitive to me. I've always had a little bit of a tech background, but certainly not a science background. And so I dove right in, left the company that I had sold, and Melissa and I set off on our ways to create a business that now has been around for 12 years. And it's really all about, at the time, it was really all about kind of this really incredible sensitive measure, which is eye movement behavior. And there are decades of research that correlate your eye movement behavior to different aspects of your health, your performance, your attention, and even some aspects of emotion. And so our goal at the time was to say, okay, we don't want to get into the hardware business around building eye tracking technology and sensors. We want to develop the software behind it that delivers really valuable inputs, because really not many people were doing that beyond a few use cases. And so it was really about kind of like taking eye tracking out of the lab and bringing it into the world. And so we've been on this journey now for pushing 13 years. And it was under different brand, a different product, and that's kind of enabled us to now very recently move into this kind of conversion of eye tracking, eye movement behavior, big data, and AI.
Okay, so that's interesting. That's a great story, Adam. I like the way you have put together this like casually meeting with somebody and then kind of turning that into a understanding the current problems out there and then turning that into an idea and then getting there. I think I really like the way you guys have spun this around. And yeah, 12 years is a long time in AI. So I believe you guys have built a great product here. I would, could you maybe, I think let's get started about, I know I have a few questions around Theia, I think the product, I think, right? How did this original idea take shape? And could you for the audience, could you tell us like what sets it apart from this existing eye tracking solutions that are in the market today? Like maybe a brief thoughts or brief overview on that.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile for me just to take a few minutes and give you a
Sure.
little bit of background on our story, because it's really where Thea has evolved from. And so back in 2015, we launched our first product, which was a medical device. It still exists today.
Mm-hmm.
It's under the brand name Right Eye, and it's a tablet-based device that's got an eye tracker built into the bottom of that tablet. And over the years, we've sold thousands of these devices to healthcare providers like neurologists and eye care professionals, and elite military and professional sports teams and hospital systems and even school systems. And we developed a few kind of bespoke eye tracking assessment products. These are tests essentially and
Mm-hmm.
training. And these things revolved around things like brain health, assessing brain health and dynamic vision, which is kind of different than static vision, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
visual acuity. It's the vision that you need when you're moving or objects are moving. Also, performance specific assessments like sports and military performance and reading comprehension and reading performance. And so over the years, like I mentioned, we've sold this around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And what we were keen to do is we procured a large database. So all the data that came in, we made sure that our customers were validating the
Mm-hmm.
issues at hand that these users, the millions of users, the conditions that they had. And so if you fast forward, we now have the largest validated eye tracking database in the world. We're pushing 14 million unique records, and it's across 140 different data sets.
Mm-hmm.
These are all validated data sets, anything from, fatigue and motion sickness all the way through to performance issues like situational awareness and stress, all the way through to health conditions like Parkinson's disease and Lyme disease and ADHD. And so we didn't necessarily know how we were going to monetize this big data set for a decade. And I got
Mm-hmm.
that question a lot. And I said, I don't know. I know we're going to, because we know that this data is golden. We just
Mm-hmm.
don't know how we're going to monetize it yet. At the same time,
And this was the old product you were talking about, the right?
correct.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Correct. This is our FDA cleared medical device
Uh-huh.
product that still exists today. At the same time, we had built, and we can get into this a little bit more detail later, but eye tracking is very fussy.
Yeah.
It's noisy data. It's a tremendous amount of data. You're talking about tracking eye movements anywhere from 30 to 200 seconds, 200 times per second per eye. So it's a lot of data. And you also have all these different devices, right? And so
Right.
it's very difficult to kind of create compatibility and build new models around eye movement data. And so we built this platform that now automates that exploratory data analysis and modeling process and the deployment process, which is Thea, that I will catch up to in a second to answer
Mm-hmm.
your question specifically. So we have the data. We
Mm-hmm.
have the platform. The problem for a decade was that the hardware, the sensors, were always big, bulky, and expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, eye tracking technology is mostly camera-based. those are the tools that you're capturing the eye movement from, where we get the signal. And over the last really couple of years, the camera technology in consumer-based devices has become better, faster, and cheaper, right? And smaller. And so what you're seeing are cameras in your cell phone, in your smartphones, your tablets, your webcam that you're using right now, even in the cabins of vehicles and in cockpits of aircraft and in XR headsets. The cameras are now sophisticated enough to where we can extract an eye tracking signal. So we saw this coming. And so a couple of years ago, we decided to create a new division that leveraged our data, which is what you need to train new models, of course, leveraged the platform that we developed, that we've automated, and leveraged this kind of unique situation for a 12-year-old company where all of a sudden their total addressable market went from like tens of thousands of devices to literally billions of consumer devices almost overnight. So we anticipated this, and we developed this new division called HarmonEyes that was really designed to deliver many more valuable outputs that aren't necessarily assessment driven, that are kind of stimuli independent, where it's not about where you're looking, it's more about how your eyes are moving, because those are these ocular signatures. And so one of the challenges is, okay, well, how do you deliver this to billions of devices? Because every one of these eye tracking sensors or these cameras are slightly different. Even, you go phone by phone or device by device. And so what we did was we invented a way to kind of create compatibility and interoperability from the signal that's coming from any eye tracking sensor, any camera-based device. And then we said, all right, we have to have a really kind of ubiquitous way to deploy this. And so we recently just launched our kind of, I say it's an SDK, which it is, a software development kit, but it really is much more than that. And that's what Theia is. It basically delivers any eye movement model to any camera-based device in a compatible and interoperable way immediately and in real time and at the edge. So a lot of our use cases require, they don't have cloud computing, right? Whether you're in a vehicle and you lose your Wi-Fi, or you're wearing augmented reality glasses, these companies are trying to make devices that are getting smaller and have less resource drain. And so we started off with HarmonEyes by building Theia to perform at the edge. So it's a very low compute, low power consumption. And it's also got a number of AI wrappers around it, et cetera. So before we get into our individual products, this is kind of the evolution of the company and how we've now evolved to where we're delivering Theia to billions of devices.
Beautiful, beautiful. I like the aspects of how you brought this up with that 14 million plus records that you have, the data sets, and then how eventually, I think this is the time, like you mentioned, because the compute is increasing at a faster pace, the chips are getting smaller, and we see all these things happening. And then obviously the camera technology has increased quite a bit. I believe I can see now that all these, what do you call, the Tesla robots or the Waymo cars, they have so much of these cameras fitted across and all. So here you said that, like, okay, with the Theia is more like a platform kind of a thing, like an SDK kind of a thing, a software development kit kind of a thing, which sits on top of any of these edge devices so that it can leverage the models that you have built based out of your data sets and helping these devices across, right? I think
yes, you've described it accurately. Think of Theia as the deployment vehicle, right? And it's deploying any of the AI models that we have inside of Theia. And our customers can license one or all of them.
Right. So in this context, how close are we to the systems that can proactively prevent fatigue or motion sickness or even other kinds of cognitive overload? So could we also do predictions here, understanding or maybe I think, like you mentioned, I think maybe you can go a bit more into the details of about what kind of things Theia can help uh, get do these predictions much better. Meaning, how is it helping the end user in this aspects? I think that is where I think yeah.
Yeah, you've got to deliver value, right?
Right,
Whether it's
right,
to a
right.
consumer or enterprise customer. So what we did was when we started HarmonEyes, we said, okay, what are some of the low-hanging fruit solutions or models that would be valuable in a consumer-based device or an enterprise industrial type of use case? And we came up with three. And so the first three that we developed were cognitive load, right? Which is a direct indicator to performance and performance outcomes, also an indicator for stress and anxiety. Fatigue, which is an issue for safety risks. And also an indicator for performance outcomes. And then motion sickness, which is a little bit more relevant in an XR environment. And so when we looked at these, we said, okay, we've used, machine learning for a decade now, right? And we understand how to develop a model around, say, cognitive load, to develop a model that can identify the current state of that person, whether you're a driver or you're playing a game or doing simulated training in a headset. But we didn't think that was enough, right? So what we said was, okay, in order for us to kind of maintain what we think is a lead in the market and continue to build moats around our business, we need to do more. We need to leverage the AI techniques to not just identify the current state of a person, but predict when that state is going to change, when someone's going to increase an overload situation or a high level of fatigue. Because the idea is that if you know ahead of time that someone's going to go from, say, a moderate level of load, which in most performance environments like driving or et cetera, that is an ideal place to be. You are performing at an optimal level. You don't want to be low, right? And inattentive and unengaged. You want to be at a moderate level where you are engaged, you're attentive. You don't want to be at a high level of load because that means that you don't have any reserve left in cognitively to address anything new that might come along. So we looked at this and we said, all right, so we can build a time series model, right, around these different conditions or different issues. But it became more complicated than that because people, when they're either driving or they're performing any sort of task, humans are rarely just continuously performing the same task. Their task is changing, right? They're also very in these kinds of environments, right? They're changing environments, right? If I'm wearing a pair of AR glasses, I may be inside on my computer doing a podcast with Raghu, and then I may go outside and go for a run, right? And now my environment's changed, plus my task has changed. So not only did we have to, develop the time series model for predictive, but we also had to leverage some of the latest AI techniques to understand when someone's has a change in task and a change in environment. So when you combine all these three different aspects, right? And I'll add one more, which is, your ground truth is different than my ground truth. So while we have a ground truth for all of our AI models, which is the kind of current gold standard. So say, for example, for cognitive load, our ground truth is the NASA TLX, which is the gold standard for measuring cognitive load. You're not necessarily an astronaut. Maybe you were. I don't think so, right? And I know I'm not, right? And I'm not a Formula One race car driver either. So we're going to have different ground truths. So we also needed to apply AI to not just adapt to environments and transition, right? Time to transition of tasks and environments, but also to be able to understand your ground truth versus my ground truth. And these are the models that we've built at a very high level of accuracy. And so when you combine all of these different techniques that we've used, plus the training data that we've got that took us over a decade to procure, we feel like we're in a really good position to lead in this space, ultimately, and we're starting to prove that out.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, amazing. I think so. Like you said, that you've been working in different sectors, but I believe automotive, aerospace, and maybe gaming, these are some of the fields which are ripe for disruption, right? I think with this kind of technology, what are your thoughts, and how do you these what are your thoughts about this? If are these ripe for disruption using these kind of eye tracking AI? Because these are one of those fields where you have a lot more cognitive overload, or for the lack of better word, I'm trying to say that some of these sectors need a lot more of this, right? I think you should. What are your thoughts? Is this these sectors, or are there any other sectors which are ripe for disruption as well?
Yes, it's a good point, and a good question. So we're kind of, as leader of this company, I'm kind of challenged with the potential. With the
Right.
potential is enormous, right? In terms of use cases and markets, it's virtually, you think of everyone's got a phone in front of them, and a tablet, a webcam all day
Mm.
at work, right? And then you get in your car and there's a camera
Yeah.
there, right? And then maybe one day you'll come home and put on a pair of augmented
Right.
reality glasses. So how do we kind of focus, right? And that's definitely a challenge, because that's just one part, is that we want to be everywhere that the user is. The
Yeah.
second part is, okay, well, we can't just stop at developing a few models. We've got to go out and develop more and more and more models, which presents an R&D challenge as well. And one of the ways that we're solving that is our automated research and product development platform that I mentioned earlier for eye tracking, right?
Mm.
Where we take in eye tracking data and we can spin up new models and iterate and tune and retune. What used to take us 9 months now takes 4 weeks, right? And so we could scale that. We can
Mm.
scale that part. Now it's okay. What's our go-to-market? Where do we sell? So we were a little bit opportunistic in the early days.
Mhm.
Really, we started in earnest marketing this about a year ago, maybe about a year and a half ago. And the markets that kind of, where we exposed it and they came to us are definitely driver monitoring for automobiles, in aerospace. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. And then in industrial use cases using XR, right? Or in simulation and training. So being
Mhm.
able to understand and predict users when they're going through training environments, whether they're repairing, in a mixed reality world, repairing a Rolls-Royce jet engine, right,
Mhm.
on an aircraft, or it's a surgeon going through training. It's about understanding. Right. That's one use case. Like another use case is, well, if I'm driving,
Mm.
right, the performance outcome is definitely maybe, more important than
Right.
in a
Right.
training environment, because now you're introducing safety risks that cause accidents, right? And so we've got these kind of use cases that we're honing in on. So with our predictive models, it's about XR. And this isn't just mixed reality. It's also, we're doing a lot of work in augmented reality right now, and how our models can input and impact the user experience to make it more delightful and less
Mhm.
annoying and more convenient in a driver monitoring world. And then also in a simulation and training environment, whether it's a flight simulator or, like I said, in an XR headset. And then we've got a number of other use cases. So that augmented reality world, we kind of call that, contextual AI,
Mhm.
right? Which is kind of understanding a person in the context of their environment. So we're now starting to do some work where, if you can imagine, we're all reading about the AR glasses that are coming out, and
Right.
how, some people think that, in 5 years we'll all be wearing them, um, and whether it's a companion, device to our phones or replaces our phones, there's a lot of money being invested in this by the Mag 7. And so where we can help there is understanding a person in the context of their environment. So some of the work that I mentioned before is integrating with AR glasses and a Gen AI chatbot, right?
Mhm.
So if I'm wearing a pair of glasses, I've got my inward facing cameras that are tracking my eye movement behavior, which is delivering the signal to Theia, which is delivering valuable outputs. But then also I've got my scene camera, which is kind of seeing where I'm looking, right? And then I've got computer vision in the background, recognizing what I'm looking. I've got a chatbot, if you will, that is taking that in and delivering valuable information. But that is a reactive type of environment, right? I'm looking at something, the chatbot's responding and giving me some sort of value. Where we come in is, what if the chatbot can adapt to how I'm feeling, not just what I'm looking or what I'm doing? So if I'm, say, taking a ACT test, right, or some sort of test, I'm doing math problems, the computer vision model can identify that I'm doing work, right? But can the computer vision, can the model actually predict, first of all, identify how I'm feeling, and then predict when I'm going to go to maybe a problematic state? But if the chatbot can understand that, then the chatbot can adjust and it can adapt to me. One use case that's kind of, I think, a good example of this is we're seeing a lot of remote telehealth visits with senior populations. So people that live in really rural areas, really difficult time getting to an urban area or even suburban area where there's a doctor. They're doing remote telehealth visits. They could be wearing glasses or just doing it on their webcam. These companies are realizing that, that the ones that are implementing now, they're starting to implementing digital humans for some of the triage stuff. What they're realizing is that the experience isn't really delightful for the patient, right? The chatbot's designed to deliver a series of questions and check off the boxes. But, if I'm asking, a person, how many cigarettes have you smoked in the last week and how many drinks are you getting your exercise? And I'm starting to feel kind of anxious and overloaded, right? Before the conversation goes south and I just hang up the phone because I'm not feeling great. Maybe if we can understand that that person is feeling this way and is about to kind of get to a problematic level in 15 seconds, then the chatbot can adapt and maybe take a different path and ask about the cute dog over the person's shoulder, make me feel more comfortable, and then reset the line of questioning in order to get the maximum experience and get the information that they need. So this is kind of understanding a person in the context of their environment, and this applies to many different areas. And then we've got a whole number of other situations where we're models that we're developing around real-time reading comprehension, even clinical biomarkers and biometric identification, right? Being able to understand that, okay, this is Raghu on my device, not Adam. And so if there's something sensitive that Adam shouldn't be looking at or Raghu shouldn't be looking at, it can turn that off. So your head's probably spinning because I just threw out like 10 different use cases and different models, but this is the challenge. It's a good problem to have, but it's still a problem.
So I think a couple of these use cases are like really, really very interesting that you've mentioned about predicting the way the people are going to react through this chatbot or whatever when you're tracking the interaction, and then change the line of questioning so that you can bring in a lot more details and maybe get more out of the situation and help the end customer, whether it is with a telehealth or whether it is with maybe driving a car, or maybe other scenarios, maybe in an industrial manufacturing scenario. So this is how did you think? Meaning, my question here is, so you are getting into a space where this is one of those situations where it is very tough to even understand that these kind of problems are going to arise. How did you get to this? Like, you are going into those human challenges, right? I think, and based out of that, you have designed your SDK or your kit. Are there some learnings that you had to input into this to get to this kind of a scenario, like developing this kind of wide variety of use cases? Did you get what I'm trying to get? Because is there some kind of human learning that you have done not the machine learning, but human learning you have done,
Yeah.
that you have
Yeah.
coming to this kind of a
It's
scenario?
a good question. We didn't just kind of land on these
Yeah.
models. So I would say for cognitive load and fatigue, and like I mentioned, we've got a host of others in our roadmap. But for cognitive load and fatigue, these are two really important human performance metrics that are widely known in the human performance area. Whether it's human performance for military, for sports, for driving, for education, decision making, right? And fortunately, my partner comes from a human performance background, right? She was a professional tennis player as a young woman, and then kind of went down that human performance path, and then had that intersection of human performance and eye tracking, and that's when we met. So when we sat back, we don't just build to build, we try to solve problems, right? And so the problems that we were hearing as we were starting to build these out are, can you solve this problem for me? Can you solve that problem for me? And ultimately we settled on our first two models, which are cognitive load and fatigue, that we just launched like 15 months ago. And then we started hearing about other problems, right? Which is kind of simulation sickness or motion sickness. And this is it could be in a virtual reality environment, but it also could be, a passenger of a vehicle or in a cockpit of an aircraft. And so I think what's important is also to understand we don't take the position that we have to invent everything. So for cognitive load and fatigue, we had the data, we had wonderful customers to validate with, right? And partners. So we spun those up, right? But for motion sickness, we didn't. So in that case, again, we're opportunistic. We found a university that had done a really robust motion sickness study. And we found them actually going through a DARPA grant together. And the DARPA grant didn't work out, but we were like, wait a second, what are you guys doing with this motion sickness data set and your algorithm? So he said, nothing. Do you want to license it? And we said, yes. So we went out and acquired this IP with an exclusive license. And we've done that a number of times now. And so we know that's a real problem. So now we're able to spin up that model, validate it, and get it to market, solve a real problem. And so we have this kind of this approach of we invent, right, ourselves novel models, and based off of our own data, but we also will partner or even acquire the IP to develop other models. And so as we've done that, we've acquired other models around an IP around biometric identification using just eye movement behavior and not retinal scan or iris scan technology, which is kind of more expensive, but just your webcam and your phone and tablet, et cetera. And we now have acquired this model that is accurate as a fingerprint, right? So it's 1 in 50,000 error rate, right? And so we haven't built that model yet, but we're going to, right? We also, I mentioned before, in our legacy product, we have a reading assessment, right, in the medical device. But when you combine the reading comprehension data from almost 1 million children across 10 different grade levels and multiple languages, and you combine AI and advanced machine learning, we're now building what we call Reading Copilot, which is a real-time, delivered through Theia at the edge, a real-time identifier or detector if you are comprehending what you're reading, right? And if you're not, we can deliver kind of a low-risk intervention to recommend that you go back and reread it. Now, that's valuable in schools, right, where teachers really don't have an idea, and parents as well don't have an idea if a child is comprehending what they're reading, right? So this is like a little coach on their shoulder, but also for industry and enterprise applications as well. If I am that person, repairing that gen engine, right, reading manuals as I'm going through that process, wearing augmented reality glasses, I want to make sure they read and comprehended that manual, right? And if not, again, delivering that intervention. So, for us, it's all about, there's a part of it that's really amazing when we can identify and predict, but there's an old performance expression, and it's so what, now what, right? It's like, okay, you're gonna tell me all the things that I'm not, right? So then tell me how to get there. Tell me how to solve my problem. Tell me how to make sure that I don't have a performance decrement or make a poor decision. And so every one of our models enables an intervention or some sort of corrective action in order to improve the outcome, whether it's a student comprehending what they're reading or a Navy fighter pilot going through training, right, and making sure that they're looking at their instruments on the cadence and frequency that they're required to, right, or even understanding when I deliver a better experience wearing augmented reality glasses. So it's all about enabling the intervention, and that can be done with the app developer or the OEM, right? But we're also kind of entering into that space and starting to develop agentic AI. So agents will actually integrate with our models and deliver those interventions automatically, of course, at the kind of setting of and options of the choosing of either the user and or the customer.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think I really like the way like you have explained. Like I think whether it is aeronautical pilot or whether it is being a coach in the education field or whether it is in telehealth. So kind of a coach while you're dealing with any kind of this camera-based movements or camera-based access or this kind of things. So I believe you have a lot of partners or potential partners that you're working with. What is that one thing or surprises the most when you talk with the partners that Theia is able to do, and that you have, and again, of course, you're planning to improvise a lot more on that too, right? I think you might be getting a lot of these surprise elements, because sometimes I think the partners, they come with this surprise because they would also need to know that you will be able to validate those results, right? I think because that is where the surprise element might come. So any thoughts around that you could share?
So are you asking specifically what's unique about what we do and the differentiated value prop?
Not yet that, but what are those surprise elements that the partners are feeling that Theia is able to solve them?
Yeah. I think it's two things primarily. I think number one, it's understanding how a person is feeling in real time is very unique, right? And so if I'm an application developer, let's take a gaming company, for example, right? If I could use this just for, developer testing, right? These models, and we're starting to see that just for user testing to understand, okay, here's this wonderful game that I built. I think it's great, but don't we know that 85% of the people are getting kind of motion sick 2 minutes in? So maybe I can modify that application, right? Or I'm developing a meditation app, but I'm realizing that during this phase of the meditation app, my users are getting overloaded because maybe you're asking me to dual task or do different things. So I'm gonna improve my application around it. Another is, I think, like I mentioned previously, which is kind of understanding a person in the context of their environment. So not in kind of an application world, but in an augmented world. And that can be wearing glasses, augmented reality glasses. It also could be driving a vehicle or flying an aircraft, right? There are a number of things that, the use case or the value is different for a pilot than it is for than someone wearing a pair of glasses walking down the street, right? And so I hope that answers your question.
Definitely that answers the question. I would like to and I believe this is device device agnostic, right? I think whatever you guys are developing, so that it is kind of making eye tracking mainstream, so that you guys are the things that you're developing are device agnostic, or do you have any limitations there?
Yeah, so really good question, and frankly, this is one of the main differentiators of
Hmm.
what we do. When we were starting HarmonEyes, we spent weeks in the Bay Area, as
Right.
you can imagine, meeting with all the usual suspects.
Hmm.
And some of these companies came to us when we were meeting, and we were in our conversations and said, we love the idea of eye movement behavior and eye tracking as a biosignal. We know how powerful and dynamic it is. We know it's objective. We know it's quantitative. We know all the things that the
Right.
potential it has. But, we're a big, massive company developing lots of devices, right?
Hmm.
And for every device that we push out, there are dozens of prototypes that we've
Yeah.
been developing for years. And every one of the cameras in those devices, including the prototypes, those cameras are slightly different.
Hmm.
So if I use, Adam, if I use your cognitive load model and I deploy it on this one particular device, how do I
Hmm.
deploy that across all of my devices? This is
Hmm.
just one company
Hmm.
because all the sensors are different. Every time you want to deploy that model to a different sensor, you have to revalidate it and retest it to make sure that it's just as accurate. So
Hmm.
we left there. We said, wow, this is not only a
Hmm.
blocker for this company, this is a blocker for literally like the entire industry of eye tracking and
Right.
the entire buyers, the actual sensor itself. So we said we have to solve this problem. And so what we did was we went back and we created we use a term called the ACE. It's an automated conversion engine that essentially that understands that every camera, every sensor, every eye tracking sensor is slightly different. It's different in the hertz rate, right? In the sampling rate of data. It's
Hmm.
different in accuracy and precision. And so in order to eliminate this constant retesting and revalidation, if we could develop an engine that basically normalizes the data stream from all the different sensors into one common standard and format, we're
Hmm.
not going to change the quality of the signal. If I
Okay.
look away and I'm not looking at the webcam, I'm not going to get data. Okay. There's not going to be a fake Adam,
Hmm.
whose eyes are continuing to stare. But when I look back, I'll pick up that data, right? But if we can, we normalize and create basically it creates a compatibility and interoperability. So we invented this, and that is one part of the platform, and frankly, a big part of Theia that goes unspoken, but is
Hmm.
super powerful. So now we have the ability to go to any customer in the world and say, it doesn't matter what
Okay.
sensor you're using. Now, if you're getting data at, 5 sample rates per second, you're
Right.
not going to be able to deliver a lot of these models because you don't have enough data, right? But if your sensors meet a specific requirement, which most consumer devices do, even webcams,
Hmm.
um, then we can run these models, right? And just that alone puts HarmonEyes in a very compelling and kind of differentiated space. And we've gotten validation now from a lot of these big companies because it takes a long time and a lot of experience to develop that kind of um, engine, if you will, to and interoperability to deliver the interoperability and
Hmm.
compatibility for eye tracking. And frankly, no one has done it in the past. So in order to take eye tracking and make it available to everybody, we had
Hmm.
to solve this problem, and we did.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think it's amazing. I think I really learned a lot in this process of you explaining that how it is, because the basic problem is like solving this across the devices and making it agnostic. I think that's a bigger problem. Thanks for taking me through this. Uh, in the context of Tia, or can you walk us through a real or a hypothetical customer scenario where you guys were able to make Thea was able to make a huge measurable difference? We don't need to talk about the names of the customers, but maybe if you can walk us through a scenario of how pre and post there is a huge difference, or at least a measurable difference that you can help us.
Yeah. And of course, every one of our customers has a different sort
Yeah,
of
yeah,
goal
different way.
goal goal in mind.
Right.
There's one in particular that comes to
Mm.
mind, which is in the world of aerospace, right?
Mm.
A lot of astronauts are really kind of tired of, at least what they've expressed is they're not really big fans of the current measure of cognitive load and cognitive assessment, right? And so it's a static test. It is taken at different points in time. You can imagine if you're an elite performer, whether you're a football player or you're an astronaut, you might, try to game the system so that even if you are at a different place, then your results look good. So no one pulls you off the field or right. And so it's not objective, it's not real time. And so we were hired by NASA and their research group, Trish, to basically develop a tool that in real time identifies and predicts the state of an astronaut, so that they can avoid behavioral health safety risks in a real live space environment. And so actually this is timely because we're going to spend about a year in the Australian Antarctic development area, which is where a lot of this tech gets tested for NASA. And we just shipped to Antarctica. Our stuff is on the boat.
Beautiful.
On the boat as we speak. And ultimately what our goal is to spend a year there, kind of validate it, test it, and then hopefully go up to space. And what you would see there is an astronaut, with an eye tracking sensors in the helmet, with a wristband showing the real time state of that person, of that astronaut, from a fatigue and cognitive load perspective, and also the time predictor of when they're going to get to the next level, so that they can take certain protective cautions or precautionary measures to avoid a safety risk. Right. So if you're in the space station, that's one sort of safety risk, but if you're on a spacewalk, that's another one. So that's an exciting use case for us. Another one is in the world of elite Formula One driving and training environments, and also in military fighter pilots, is in a training environment, whether it's a simulator, et cetera, being able to train with this information. So it's not necessarily use cases, not necessarily yet in an F1 car, but we've partnered with the company that trains a lot of the Formula One drivers. It's an organization out of Italy called Formula Medicine. We're really excited about this partnership because we think we can have a really significant impact on the training side of things, which ultimately will lead to improved performance. Now, we've got a ton of performance data from our legacy, our legacy data, our legacy data set and performance that correlate, just our own research. We've published dozens of level 1 peer-reviewed articles on the impact of, cognitive assessment or cognitive load from warfighters and professional athletes and students, et cetera. So those are just two examples. And then some of the, from a go-to-market perspective, we're still a small company with a relatively small sales and marketing team. It's hard for us to go to the tens of thousands of app developers and OEMs. So in the world of XR, we've partnered now, we'll be announcing this shortly, with Qualcomm, where they'll be delivering through their tech stack at the reference design level for the Snapdragon chips for the XR headset, so augmented reality and XR glasses. We're partnering with them to bring our models and Theia to the application developers and OEMs that make those devices. So, and we have a similar relationship in the automotive space as well. And so things are starting to build.
Up,
yeah, and we've partnered with some of the, the Mag 7 companies who are developing these augmented reality glasses. An interesting use case that may not sound terribly important, but we're all users of consumer devices like phones, et cetera. And the one thing that I think that we all like is the devices that we use, they delight us, right? They don't annoy us, and they know when to deliver information to us, and maybe they don't, right? But in the world of augmented reality, right, wouldn't it be nice to know if someone is super engaged with whatever their task is, or even even getting overloaded, maybe if I'm the OEM, I decide not to deliver a notification to that person at that time, right? Sounds trivial, but if you're delivering notifications to me while I'm performing critical important tasks, then you're just bothering me,
Yeah, just
right?
bothering
And and that's not a great experience. So not every one of our use cases is, an astronaut on a spacewalk, but they could be very impactful to the user experience and satisfaction of using these devices as we move forward.
Beautiful. Interesting point. I think, yeah, I never thought about the other way around until you told. Like, sometimes it's better not to even disturb. I think if there is some kind of a high intensity, you're in middle of a high intensity job or something like that, I think the notifications or the alerts are not needed. And of course, if things are getting critical, I think it's a different story. But I think, yeah, great.
And then that's the contextual AI part
Right,
of what
right.
we enable, right?
Yeah.
Understanding a person literally in the context of their
In the
environment right
context,
now, but their environment and their task may change in 15 seconds, and being able to adapt to that.
Beautiful. I think depending on the environment, depending on the context, I think managing that, I think that's going to be very interesting, and not only interesting, very useful or very helpful for the end users and for the businesses, right? I think so. You said that like you're going to work with Qualcomm or kind of doing the integration with that. I think how easy is from the development standpoint integrating into a tech stack? Any is it does it take is it easier, or is it going to be a bit more? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the first part is, our responsibility alone, which is designing this SDK that's super robust but really easy to deploy. And so with Theia, you can just download the SDK off our website,
Okay.
right? And then you license the models inside of it and you deploy it. However, Theia does need to kind of understand what sensor it's delivering, it's receiving the signal from, right? And so that's where that automated conversion wrapper around the SDK. We're kind of finalizing the automation part right now, where right now it requires a little bit of a human in the loop for a little bit just to get a sample data stream and validate it. But I would say in a matter of a month or two, it's going to automatically recognize that data stream from that sensor, if it's your webcam or it's your glasses or it's your car. And in the course of, say, a 7-second integration process, it's going to automatically deliver Theia with the models that are, again, compatible and to that sensor. And if it doesn't meet that requirement, it would let you know. But the work on Theia is done. We've just recently launched it in the last 2 weeks. We're really excited about it. And then it comes down to, okay, well, the data stream, like how do we deliver the outputs, right? So we deliver outputs every second. Every second you're getting, the current state of the person for each respective model. And we also, the time series data, right? Which is the predictor of when they're going to get to the next level. So that's the data that you need to understand. But we have some customers that want to actually visualize that. They want to see graphic visual outputs. So we help with that as well. So we deliver the actual data so that it can inform the interventions that are pre-programmed. And we can deliver the actual graphic visualization so that you can do like a after action review and do kind of your pre-post and say, okay, in this one training session, did someone improve? Also, and I talked about the other use cases around developer user and things like that. So some of the output is graphical, but at the core, it's data. And then it's just a matter of you take that data, the customer, and they can integrate that with data from other modalities. They can do whatever they want with it.
Beautiful. So I think now we'll come to the interesting part of our conversation. I term this the $1 million or $1 billion question, the extra AI question, I would say. I know the market is slowly waking up to this AI enhanced perception, right? I think. How do you see HarmonEyes stay ahead of the curve, or what is that differentiation factor? I know you talked about a few things around that, but is there a unique thing? If you would like to term it in one phrase or one word or one sentence, what do you think you could put it?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm constantly reminded of
Mm.
is, right, is that, we're not going to be the only ones doing this, right?
Yeah,
And in fact, we're not the only ones now. There are some people that are trying
sure,
to
sure.
solve
Yeah.
one problem or another problem. Um, and so in order to maintain that lead and create more moats around our business, and it's not a perfect term, but this idea of a foundational model, right? A
Mm, mm.
multimodal model, not in the traditional sense of, say,
Yes.
an LLM, with a voice modality. It's more of the other way around, which is if we can develop a
Mm,
number of models, not 3 models, 4 models, 5 models, but dozens of models, and we have the platform and the data to spin up dozens of validated and accurate models, then ultimately, if you are you're in the business of delivering eye tracking models, right? You don't need to develop them yourself, right? So you'll come to us and you'll use Theia to
mm-hmm.
deploy these models. And so and the way I see it is ultimately it's this kind of, again, it's an imperfect cliche because a lot of people are using foundational models in different ways today.
Right, right.
But this kind of, the way I describe it is a foundational model around eye movement behavior. So ultimately, you might have Thea delivering a Parkinson's diagnostic screener, right?
Mm,
But also a cognitive load real-time predictor, right? It's one SDK, but it's dozens and dozens of models. And we've got 140 different data sets that we can spin up models on. And those are our data sets. We can go out and acquire others. If others are building them and we have the market on the delivery vehicle, then it might make sense for them to,
partner with you.
to
Yes.
partner with us.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we're seeing that right now. We're just
Sure.
about to acquire an ADHD medication measurement, real-time
Mm.
medication measurement algorithm, right? And the patent around that so that we can deliver that in schools or in industry, right, et cetera. And so it's really just about staying ahead
Mm-hmm.
and constantly building moats around our business to add dozens of models over time.
Beautiful. I like the way you put it, like a foundational model around the eye tracking movement. I think uh, that sums it up well. I think before we wrap up, any key takeaways or something like that you would uh, want our innovators or enterprises or researchers to walk away with after hearing this?
Yeah, I think a lot of people that we come across, they hear this pitch, right? They hear
Mm,
this value
mm.
proposition like, wow, this is kind of far out. We didn't necessarily know this existed. We didn't know that you can deliver accurate predictions of how somebody's feeling.
Mm,
But it not only is it's not only novel, but it exists today.
mm,
And we're deploying it on devices. We're
mm.
deploying it in with researchers. We're deploying it with product developers. We're deploying it with application developers. And so I will leave you by saying, this is ready. It's
Mm.
ready to go. And we're starting to see the momentum, and it can be used in a number of different ways. And we're really excited about where this is going. And I, our customers get it. The ones where we have the opportunity to talk to, they really start to understand the value that they can get out of this incredible measurement called eye movement behavior and
Mhm.
the sensor around it. And it's not a sensor that works in, one environment, one task, or even one device. It's
Mm.
a ubiquitous one. And so we expect that, the glasses technology and the vehicles, they're all going to include these cameras, and they are. If they don't, they're going to. This
Right.
is what we're seeing, and so we can be everywhere, and we're really excited about the journey.
Beautiful. I think one last question before I let you go. I think I learned a lot in this conversation. Uh, I know at the rate at which things are improving, what do you foresee 5 to 10 years from now in this field?
Yeah, I think I'll go back to that kind of foundational model around eye
Mm,
movements,
mm,
where it's kind of a one-stop shop, right?
mm,
But I see immediately in the next, say, I don't know, short to midterm, 2 to 5 years, I see the adoption.
Okay.
Of course, you're going to have our early adopters, the adoption and the proof points
Right.
of how these models really impact performance, how they impact user experiences. I think there will be it'll be a process, right? Because we're in our own world and we talk to others who are in their own worlds,
Yeah.
and most people don't think about, well, if you're tracking my eye movements, it could seem a little bit, a little bit strange, and maybe I don't want you to do that. But, there are a lot of technologies over the history, right? Especially the
Right.
last
Right.
20 years where, early on, you're like, what? You're going to get my facial pattern, and then that's going to unlock my phone. That's a little bit too much, but ultimately, when you deliver that experience where I hold the camera up to my face, and in 2 seconds my phone unlocks, now I can't live without it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's like with Google Maps, right,
Right.
and Waze,
Right.
right? Growing up, we seem like we're maybe the same age. We had real maps, actual
Yeah.
maps, right? And that was just fine. We got away with it. We used it. It was the only thing we knew, right? But now, if you think about Waze, we can't live without it. And so it's just this cycle, right, of novel technology, measuring, biosensors. And one thing I didn't mention before, which I think is really important, is that we have kind of zero tolerance for privacy. So we're
Mm.
not interested in your data when we deliver our models. We're not
Right. Right.
restoring, recording any of your eye tracking data. We're actually deleting it, and that's how that SDK Theia can operate at the edge. It's because it's low storage. We're literally deleting your data every second as we're delivering the output. And so, we hope that the adoption will be fast and robust once we prove that over time that we deliver really incredible experiences. And ultimately, it's your eyes and
Right.
it's how you're feeling. And
Mm-hmm.
what we see is when people use these demos that we've built, it's the wow factor. You
Yeah.
have to see it and feel it to believe it. And when you see that our models are reading you and predicting you, it is an experience that's hard to forget. And that really is when we sell people on this. So it's one of those things that you have to see it to believe it. We're going to be actually developing some models and for people to download on the browser and using their webcam, and they'll be able to run these models for 10 minutes, a half an hour, and you'll be able to see the output, and then anyone will be able to experience this. So that's coming pretty soon too.
Beautiful. Love the conversation. Thanks for your time.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Raghu.
Thank you.
What a fascinating look into the future of machine perception, from immersive gaming to astronaut safety. The possibilities of predictive eye tracking with AI are just beginning. A huge thank you to Adam Gross for joining us and sharing the vision behind HarmonEyes and Theia. It's a bold reminder that in the age of AI, even a glance can generate insight. And innovation is no longer just in our hands, but in our eyes. To our listeners, stay curious, stay sharp, and keep watching this space. We'll be back soon with more extra AI stories from the edge of intelligence. Happy predicting the future with AI technologies. Until next time, this is Raghu Banda signing off.